August 7th of 2023, the defendant, Devyn Michaels, brutally murdered and savaged the body of her ex, Johnathan Willette. But the story did not begin on August 7th of 2023, and all I can say is buckle up because you're in for a wild ride. This is Johnathan in life. It's Jonathan's two young children that he shared with the defendant. Both girls, faces blocked out, they're preteen young children. You will learn during the course of this trial that John had a son from a prior relationship named Devyn, that after Devyn was born, he split with Devyn's mother, eventually getting into a relationship with the defendant. They then had these two children together. They separated, and there was a custody agreement that was ordered by the family court in which the victim had full physical custody of the girls. You will learn that the defendant was not happy about that situation, that the defendant wanted to have control of her girls, and she wanted to start a new life with Devyn, the same Devyn that is John's son. On August 7th of 2023, Yoko Willette, an elderly woman, woke up to find her dead son in his room with what she referred to as his face and neck missing. This is the 911 call she plays.
Yes, this is Yoko Willette. My number is, address is 2698 Aradura Drive, Henderson, Nevada. Yeah, 702-203-8975. Okay, I went downstairs and my son is on the bed and all bloody. I open the cover. It's all bloody. I don't know. Can you come over?
Yeah, we're coming help you. What happened to him, you know?
I have no idea. And so was the outside this morning.
Is he awake now?
And
Is he awake?
Yes, I think he's dead.
Listen to me, I already have a calling for help, okay? How old is your son?
About 46 seconds.
Is he breathing?
Oh, bloody all over. Huh?
Where's he bleeding from him?
I don't know, from the neck or something.
Do you see any weapons around him?
No.
Nothing. Would he have harmed himself? Can you tell?
What?
Did he look like he hurt himself at all? Like, maybe shot
I have
himself?
no idea. Those was on the yard. I told him, I didn't know he was trying to move out from my house.
Okay.
And his girlfriend was here yesterday.
Okay. When's the last time you saw him? Yeah, when's the last time you saw him okay? How long ago?
Last night.
Last night?
Yeah, I think somebody has to come to eat.
Okay, yeah, we're already on the way, okay? We're going to try to help him before we get there. Do you have a defibrillator available inside your house?
Huh?
Do you have the defibrillator available at your house, a shocking machine?
I don't.
That's okay. Ma'am, what I want you to do is, do you feel safe to get right next to him so we can try to just...
That is what police found when they arrived at the Willette residence. Johnathan on his bed in his bedroom. As you can see, his head is missing. Large blood stain at the foot of the bed there, and a large amount of blood underneath where his head should be. Officers eventually removed the cover from his body and noted several chemical burns, or what appeared to be strange chemical burns on his body. And a very clean decapitation that you can see there. Henderson Police Department was responsible for the investigation. After first responders arrived on scene, clearly couldn't render any medical aid to the victim, they locked down the scene. Homicide investigators are then enlisted and take over. Along with the homicide investigators, they bring out an army of crime scene analysts and treat this case obviously very seriously, and they go into the home. After executing a search warrant. When they go into the home, they obviously focus on the bedroom, but they do a pretty thorough search of the entire residence, the curtilage, the backyard, the front, the trash cans, the upstairs bedrooms, the kitchen, the living room, and these are the items that they find. A couple of chemical bottles, obviously relevant for the potential chemical burns on the victim's body. They find some interesting writings that you'll see a little bit more of later, demonstrating that there was a contentious custody case going on between the victim and someone at that point, someone. They see out front John's moving truck, the victim's moving truck. You will learn that he had a moving business. There's a trailer on the back. It's parked a little cattywampus, going the wrong way on the street and poking out into the street as though he may have planned on moving after he last parked that car or truck. But the items that weren't found are what was particularly notable for the investigators. They didn't find a murder weapon. They didn't find whatever this person used to cut his head off. They did not find his head. They did not find his wallet. They did not find his truck keys, and they did not find his phone. They interviewed Yoko, and the gentleman above Yoko's photo is Yoshida, her partner. According to Yoko and Yoshida, the defendant, who they referred to as Nikki and knew as Nikki, ultimately identified as Devyn Michaels, was the last person to see Johnathan alive. Nikki and John had been moving the girls and John's items from this Paladura address to Nikki's address on Porcupine Rim that she shared with Devyn, and for a temporary period over the summer, the young girls. They learned that Nikki and John returned to this address, the Paladura address, for the last time at 10 p.m. on August 6th, or around 10 p.m. They learned from Yoko that about 1 a.m. she was going downstairs for a glass of water and ran into the defendant, who she will describe to you when you hear from her as she appeared to be startled to see me. The defendant and Yoko have a conversation. It's relatively brief. Yoko's in the kitchen cleaning up some dishes. The defendant has now entered the kitchen, and they begin to talk when the defendant tells Yoko, John's asleep. Don't go in there. Those aren't her words. You'll hear this through the course of the trial. She says, John's asleep. He's passed out. We have plans for him to move some more stuff in the morning, kind of don't bother him kind of thing. Yoko then noticed that the lights were on in John's room, but decided, hey, if he's asleep, I'm not going to go in there. She returns back upstairs. Yoko went to sleep, leaving Nikki, or the defendant, alone in the home. You will learn very clearly that there were only 4 people in the home at the time of this incident. The victim, the defendant, Yoko, and Yoshida. Yoko also will tell you that around 8 a.m. she found John without a face. You probably heard from the 911 call there's a bit of a language barrier. She'll do her best to describe what she initially saw and the shock, obviously, that ensued. So the defendant is the last person to see him, so investigators are very curious to speak with her. Homicide detectives summon her to the scene. They get a hold of her via a phone number given by a neighbor. She answers that phone. It's her phone. She agrees to come to the scene, leaving Devyn and the girls are with the defendant as well. She, in her initial interview, says John is her ex. They share the 2 children together. That they spent the whole day together on August 6th, moving, shopping for the girls' school supplies, etc. Everything's normal from her perspective. That evening, they were moving the girls' things into her home on Porcupine, and she was, in fact, at the Paladura residence last night doing that. She would go on to describe it's a normal night, there's nothing out of sorts, and that John was alive and well in the garage when she left. Remember that. Further investigation, of course, occurs. Homicide detectives are treating this very seriously. You will learn from many of them that when a homicide such as this comes in, they divide duties. There's too much for one person to do. And so, although there is a lead detective who goes by the name of Dennis Ozawa, Detective Ozawa was not in any way the only person investigating this case. He had an entire team, and you will hear from many of those people. You will learn that one big thing in the modern days of investigation is videos, video cameras. They're everywhere in our valley, so they canvass all around. The Paladura residence is kind of right in the middle of all those yellow markers. They canvassed all these different addresses for anything who saw, heard anything, and anyone who had a camera. Some of those were fruitful, some of them were not. They knocked on the doors where video cameras were visibly present. They even knocked on doors where they weren't present in the hopes that maybe someone saw or heard something. And they gathered a lot of footage. We're going to do our best during the course of this trial to streamline it for you. There's hundreds of hours of footage, and we're going to present it in the best way we can. They also learned that there is a neighbor directly to the left of the homicide scene who had a motion-activated Ring camera, which will become important later in the trial. There also was an autopsy, of course. The Henderson Detective Ozawa attended that autopsy. You will hear from the medical examiner in this case, Dr. Stephanie Yagi with the Clark County Coroner's Office, who enlisted the assistance of a forensic anthropologist, Dr. Burns, who works out of UNLV. You will learn that Dr. Yagi surmised that the cause of death was homicidal violence and the manner of death was homicide. You will learn that she noted the non-thermal chemical burns on the body, which did not contribute to his death, but were notable for investigative purposes. Something important I want you to keep in the back of your mind is there were no bleeding injuries anywhere else on the body, so everything was focused neck and above. You will learn that the decapitation occurred post-mortem. There are histological reactions that the body has if this type of thing happens while you're still alive and your body is trying to actively repair itself. None of those were present during the course of the autopsy, and so the doctor will testify that this was a post-mortem decapitation. As I mentioned, she enlisted the assistance of a forensic anthropologist, Dr. Burns. You will hear from her as well. She will talk about the science behind what she does, and in this particular case, she was enlisted for the main purpose of determining what was used to cut off Mr. Willette's head. She will tell you that she did microscopic examination. During the course of that thorough examination, she determined very clearly that there were 2 separate instruments used to chop off his head. She even can narrow it down by time because of the layering of the artifacts on the bones. And so she will surmise and testify that first, a serrated or non-serrated knife was used, so a knife, whether serrated or not. When that was unsuccessful, the defendant then used a powered saw of some sort. She can't narrow it down to class. You will learn, or class of tool. You will learn that the bones in the neck, the cervical spine, are very small. There are areas on it which would reflect these markings, but they are so small that she can't really surmise what type of saw. She'll testify that if it's a long bone, she has seen cases with dismemberment, involving dismemberment, but not a decapitation. But with dismemberment of larger bones, you can see more, which allows you to narrow down the type of saw that was used, but here that's not possible. Nonetheless, she will testify clearly that it was 2 different instruments, knife first, saw second. Further investigation also revealed what Mr. Draskevich alluded to in jury selection, a very non-traditional family situation. And I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. The investigation revealed that the defendant, after splitting with John, ultimately married his son, Devyn. Devyn moves in with her. They are together for an extended period of time. The defendant loses custody of the girls, and eventually the girls end up for a short period of time over the summer of 2023 before school starts, living in the home with the defendant and Devyn, with Johnathan living back at the Paladura residence with his mom and Yoshida. This is Clark County Department of Family Services document showing the parent placement verification letter describing that John was awarded full physical custody of the girls on October 27th of 2022. That Johnathan, as I said, and the girls were living at 2698 Paladura at the time. You can see in the document that the defendant had weekly supervised visitation with the girls for an extended period of time. And you will learn through various witnesses that John kind of bent the rules with that and allowed her to see the girls a little bit more than was court ordered. You will also learn that John allowed the girls to stay with the defendant and Devyn, as I mentioned, at the Porcupine Rim address over the summer of 2023, and that Johnathan was going to move in with the defendant and the girls to try to stabilize their lives and basically try to get everyone under the same roof. The girls were having a real hard time with the custody situation, and his main focus was the girls. Obviously, with all this information they have gathered, the defendant is now a person of interest. She's the last person to see John. She's been over there very close in time to his murder. There's all these ties. There's the custody paperwork I showed you earlier, the writings that were in his room. And so they respond to Porcupine Rim. I can't remember if I put a map in here, but I'll just tell you we'll have a Google map for you that shows the distance between the homes. They're about 30 minutes apart. Paladura is in Henderson. Porcupine Rim is in Las Vegas, and it's a pretty good distance, about 30 minutes. The detectives will tell you, and this is Detective Ozawa and Detective Carrie Skinner, that when they go to the residence, they observe the defendant. She's kind of either moving stuff or moving back and forth between the home and the vehicle, and they note a couple of things before they approach and make contact with her. You see the Nissan Armada, which is the defendant's vehicle, looks pretty clean and shiny. You will see that cell phone on the right. The detectives observed that when they first drove up, kind of sitting in the rocks near the driveway. Thought, okay, that's weird, but we're not going to touch it. We're not executing a search warrant yet. They leave it be, and then they make contact with the defendant to interview her again, because now they know some more things, and things aren't quite adding up, and they want to know a little bit more. They make contact with the defendant, and this is prior to them going into the home and executing a search warrant on the home. They get a little more information, but the story generally remains the same, that John recently dated Andrea. This is extra information. But that last night he threw away his engagement ring in the trash can at Paladura, which, remember that. That John wanted to get back together with her romantically. This is new information. And move in, which we already know to provide stability for the girls. She mentioned that Yoko does not know Devyn and I are married. She claimed that her marriage with Devyn was one of convenience for insurance purposes and non-romantic and not sexual in nature. You will learn, and you'll actually hear it, the interview. During this interview, out in the police vehicle in front of Porcupine Rim, the girls walk up, and you can hear them. Their sweet little voices, and they're like, "This is Daddy's phone. This is Daddy's phone. This is why he wasn't answering." The detectives realize that's kind of important. They take the phone from the girls, or the girls give it to them, and the detectives note blood on the phone. Something important. They ask the defendant, "Well, how did this get here?" And she responded generally that he must have left it here earlier in the day when he was moving, and I don't know. I mean, there's a cigarette butt over there. I know he smoked cigarettes. It's by where the phone was. He probably left it. And the detectives are a little suspicious of that. They ask her a few more questions. Again, you're going to hear this stuff in the audio recording, so I've summarized it. And then ultimately at the end, she again sticks with this. John was alive and well in the garage when I left. As I mentioned, the detectives then obtain a search warrant and execute that search warrant on the home. They also get the warrant for the vehicles. You'll learn that that white moving van is Devier's work van. He was a home security installer. He did various jobs for a legitimate company. They searched that vehicle, nothing of evidentiary value found in that vehicle. You can also barely see behind the van, there's a small sedan that's inoperable, but they search it nonetheless. They find nothing of evidentiary value. When it comes to the defendant's Nissan Armada, they photograph it on the outside, but then they apply seals to every opening, and then they tow that to have it searched later at their lab. You will learn they find in the garage the Ring cameras from John's home. A little weird. They grab them up, they seize them pursuant to the search warrant in the hopes that maybe since these are the cameras from John's home, it captured something. There is no footage, unfortunately, associated with it. They issued administrative subpoenas and attempted to obtain footage from Ring. There was no footage because he didn't have the right account to store the Ring footage in the cloud. And I'm butchering the technical terms, I'm sure, but you'll hear all of this from witnesses. They also noted that there was no SD card in the cameras themselves, but nonetheless, they took them, they seized them pursuant to the search warrant, just to make sure. You will also learn they find several of defendants' writings throughout the home describing kind of the relationship with Devier, not exactly how the defendant described it to them to begin with. Very importantly, they find the defendant's purse. Inside her purse, they find the victim's social security card, along with one of her work cards. This is the defendant's bedroom. What I've circled there is basically her underwear drawer. When you execute a search warrant, you go through everything. You basically toss the place, and when they were searching the defendant's underwear drawer, they found something. My mouse is freezing on me here. Very important. They find several layers of knotted plastic bags, and inside they find the victim's wallet, current identification, and his only set of truck keys. After the search warrant, they speak with the defendant again. They learn that the defendant's version regarding the phone is that she has no idea how it ended up there. They confront her with the blood on the screen. She initially says, "Oh, I don't know," and then she says, "He cut himself moving." Remember when I talked about the autopsy earlier, no other bleeding injuries on the victim's body? Remember that? She claims he cut himself while he was moving. There's no evidence to suggest that. They learned John wanted to move in with the defendant so we could have the girls under one roof and parent them. They further learn, although they already kind of know this, that John has physical custody of the girls, and the defendant claims she plays nice with him to kind of keep access to the girls and keep things kosher. They also learn, which is very important, that John was moving in quicker than she expected. They learn not only from the defendant but other witnesses that this idea of them reuniting for the children had been discussed for several months, but that on this night, on August 6th, John began loading stuff into the truck when the defendant is loading up the girl's stuff into the truck. And she kind of realizes for the first time he was serious about this and this is going to happen. And you'll learn that that's when the walls start closing in on the defendant and she makes the decision she made. The detectives confront her with the fact that there is no notifications on the phone when the girls provide it. It's black, they open it, and there are no notifications on the screen. But that she had contacted him several times the night before, and that those notifications should be there based on the timing of the phone arriving in her house. They ask her, before telling her what they have found in the home, they ask her, hey, do you have any idea where John's wallet would be? She says very unequivocally, no idea. They then say, well, hey, we kind of found this ID and this wallet in your bedroom. And she then changes her story, and she provides a version, again, you will hear this audio recording, in which she says it was back at the Paladura residence. She held the plastic bags open, and John placed his items into the bag, and she tied them up right in front of them. And they confront her when the story doesn't make sense over and over, and that's kind of the story she sticks with regard to that. You will learn there was an extensive follow-up investigation after that interview. Although things weren't adding up, although things looked very strange, the detectives did not rush to judgment and arrest her right there. Although all of the victim's property is inside her home, his blood is at her scene, they don't arrest her right there. They choose to do follow-up investigation. You will learn there was fingerprint analysis that was done. Nothing really of evidentiary value comes of that. You will learn that DNA processing was done, that the victim's blood was in fact on the phone at her house, and that the defendant's DNA was on the knot of those plastic bags where his property was found inside. You will also learn that an extensive digital investigation was done, and that was in the form of video surveillance, digital forensics, meaning phone dumps. They take the actual devices found. There's 11 found inside her home, including the victims. They plug it into a machine. They'll talk about the technology. They're able to extract the data from the phone, and they find several things of note. They also do a call detail record investigation. That is the records that your cell phone maintain or are maintained on your cell phone, everybody's cell phone, with the company you use for service. And those records not only show incoming and outgoing messages and calls, but they also show location data, because every time you place a call or receive one, you are pinging on some kind of tower and leaving a trail of where you've been. Not a precise trail, but a general trail of where you've been. They also pull Burla. Burla is a lot more precise than the cell phone towers. That is an infotainment system inside the Nissan Armada. And they're able to extract that data, and I'll show you that in a moment. They very clearly get a timeline based upon the Burla. The defendant's vehicle is at the victim's home by 10 o'clock at night. The vehicle activates but does not move at about 11 o'clock at night. The vehicle leaves the home for good at 2:04 a.m. 2:04 a.m. on August 7th. And you'll see that in a moment. I've noted here that the video surveillance, DFL, and CDR rule out Devyn. Obviously, he was interviewed. You will hear from him during the course of this trial, but they treat him as a suspect. Obviously, there's some fishy circumstances. They're not just pinning this on the defendant because what she's saying doesn't make sense. They're looking into both the defendant and Devyn and others. The video surveillance that I'm referring to is kind of wide-ranging. There is one particular camera you're going to learn about that was near the Porcupine Rim residence, the defendant's home. That is a full-time camera. It's not a motion-activated camera. That allows them to see the home, see what vehicles left, came and went at any given time, and they clearly rule out Devyn from that video. In addition, I mentioned earlier, there's video surveillance from next door to the victim's home. That captures the defendant at around 11 a.m. going to her vehicle, moving it slightly, and then ultimately leaving. Gotta love technology. Here are a couple of additional clips from video surveillance. The one on the left is the defendant with the victim the night before when they're doing the moving. It shows us that they are together, that no third party is present, it's just them. They go into a store, they buy an item, and they leave. And then 2:28 a.m., the defendant is alone. It kind of clipped off on this particular picture, but the defendant is alone in her vehicle after she leaves the residence and goes back to her home, ultimately landing there about 2:46 a.m. Those digital forensic examinations I mentioned become relevant, especially when it comes to Devyn. There's much more than this, but I'm trying to narrow it down for the opening statement. This particular message was sent from Devyn to the defendant. As you can see, at 10:36 p.m. See you when you get back. I'm going to sleep. Girls are in the living room. And the video surveillance supports that. This image you're seeing now is the CDR cell tower location data. There is much more to it when the witness testifies. There's a bunch of animated videos you're going to see. Just for this purpose, I did a screenshot. The blue and red represent the victim and the defendant's phone, and the green represents Devyn's phone at our operative time period, showing him across town when that last message was sent and throughout the evening. You'll also see the burla that I referenced earlier. As I mentioned, burla leaves actual GPS breadcrumbs, like by the foot. So as opposed to just a tower you're hitting on, this is actually showing the track. And you're going to see very clearly when the defendant came and went from the victim's residence on the night of August 6th, as well as when she left on August 7th. After all of this information is gathered, it's very clear that the defendant did this to the detectives. They make the decision to place her under arrest for murder with use of a deadly weapon. After she is arrested, she is interviewed again. This time they try with two different detectives. Obviously, the statements she gave earlier were inconsistent, and so they send in a couple of other detectives, and you'll hear from that detective as well. In this particular interview, the defendant acknowledged that she realized John was actually moving in, that at the time of the murder, she was giving John a massage on the bed. While he was lying on his stomach, the defendant got up, walked over to the fireplace, and grabbed a large, what she referred to as a stick or maybe a candle holder. It's a large, heavy object. John was lying on his stomach, not a threat, in the midst of a massage, face down, unexpected, and the defendant admits that she returned to the bed, bashed him over the head with that club or stick, and that John went limp at that time. You will learn that the defendant refused to acknowledge what she did next. You can make your determination as to why someone might do that as this trial goes on. That she refused to tell detectives what she did with John's head or with the weapon. That those items were never recovered. And so you need to put together the pieces, as the judge just described with the rain example. You will learn that this is the reality of the situation before John was killed, and that the defendant wanted John out of the picture. This is the future that she saw, that she wanted, and the only way to have that future was with John out of the picture. Thank you for your time and attention this week. We truly do appreciate it.
Is the defense going to give an opening statement?
Yes, we are, Your Honor. And if we could have perhaps a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief recess so we can get the technology set up for the defense's opening statement. During this recess, you must not discuss or communicate with anyone, including fellow jurors, in any way regarding this case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. You must not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. You must not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. You must not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, and you must not form or any opinion regarding this case. So it's fine submitted to you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 1:50. We'll be in recess until 2:05.
All rise for the jury. Please leave your notebooks on your chairs.